Oh, you missed one.
Yeah. That is awesome. That is just, thank you very much.
Get a new one when Scott rejoins us.
What's that?
We'll get a new one when Scott rejoins.
Is she on vacation? Oh. Okay. Wow. Now I can understand that. Okay. Let's see. Bob, how have you been doing?
Working too hard.
Well, that's good, I think.
Yeah.
Are these yours?
All things moderation. No, I think these are mine. Everybody's got one.
Oh, these are for, I bet, this deal tonight.
I think so.
Okay. I got you. Wow, this looks like this could be a marathon here.
Ralph, how's this work? Just speak into it, or have to touch anything, or what do I do?
No, just get it close to you.
Comes on
as
automatic.
long as the green light's on, you're on live.
Yeah.
Ron, do you want to go ahead and sign this? It's your oath of office stuff.
Gosh.
That's my copy. And then this will be your copy.
A lot of folks here tonight.
And you sign both?
Yeah. We got the election all certified, so you're official.
Here we go. This is mine, you say?
Uh-huh.
Thank you. Oh, here. This is yours.
Oh, that's Betty's fancy pen. She'll get me.
Right.
I know you all are ready. Is this on?
Yes.
But we do have to wait a few minutes for the TV to start, so that's what we're sitting here doing nothing for.
Doing it really well.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Sure. Yeah. It's my favorite type. I keep waiting to get samples. I never really
I feel out of sorts tonight. It's weird.
That's every night.
No?
For a day.
I said I feel out of sorts tonight.
Usually we'll have one on Hill sitting next to you.
So what?
I haven't seen you forever. Just send the paper.
We're not doing anything.
Welcome back.
We haven't had anything to do.
If they don't come back.
How's everything going on?
I'm just trying to keep my head above water.
I bet. Sue's area.
Just lost one. David's car back in the back. Beside Kevin Palmer.
Yeah.
He's an assistant. I think he is.
I see his face.
It's not too bad. Their assistant.
Mm-hmm. Said she wants to do it again.
I first met him.
Okay, I think time is up, and this is now the Farragut Board of Mayor and Alderman meeting for August 28th.
Here
We'll start by rising for a moment of silent prayer, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We do have a quorum. Dot Lamarche is not here tonight, cannot be here tonight. And at this point, we're going to recess because we've got some swearing to do, as in swearing in. So, you're on.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a very special night for the Farragut Board of Mayor and Aldermen in the town of Farragut, as we've just recently had an election here in the town. And tonight we're going to be swearing in for the next 4-year terms our Mayor, Ralph McGill, our Alderman, Bob Markley, and new Alderman, Ron Pinchak. So tonight we have the honor of having our municipal judge, Lucinda Troyer, here to swear in our elected officials. So I'll call you all up one at a time. I know that we have the oath of office to prepare that Ms. Troyer is going to be giving each of you, and I know Sue will love to get some pictures, or Chelsea will love to get some pictures afterwards as well. So we will start off tonight with Mayor Ralph McGill.
Apparently so. We can work you in. You're free to get that. You want to do a midterm?
I, Dr. Ralph McGill, do solemnly swear or affirm that I possess all of the qualifications of the office of mayor as prescribed by the charter of the town of Farragut, that I will support the Constitution and will obey the laws of the United States. That I will support the Constitution and will obey the laws of the state of Tennessee. That I will, in all respects, observe the provisions of the charter and ordinances of the town of Farragut. And I will faithfully discharge the duties of mayor.
Mayor.
Yes, we could do this on the own. I'll propose that.
All right, our next elected official to be sworn in tonight is Alderman Robert Markley.
Elvis. Have you ever seen the photos? Really? Elvis remarried us in Vegas.
Wow, that's right.
It was great.
That's the
I'll
official.
send you a photo. I'll look forward to it. It was a good Elvis impersonation. Not like Elvis.
I, Robert Markley, solemnly swear or affirm that I possess all of the qualifications of the office of alderman as prescribed by the charter of the town of Farragut. That I will support the Constitution and will obey the laws of the United States. That I will support the Constitution and will obey the laws of the state of Tennessee. That I will, in all respects, observe the provisions of the charter and ordinance of the town of Farragut. That I will faithfully discharge the duties of alderman.
All right, now we have Alderman Ron Pinchak. be given the oath of office. It might be, yeah.
That I possess all the qualifications of the office of alderman as prescribed by the charter of the town of Farragut, and that I will support the Constitution and will obey the laws of the United States, that I will support the Constitution and will obey the laws of the state of Tennessee, that I will, in all respects, observe the provisions of the charter and ordinances of the town of Farragut, and I will faithfully discharge the duties of alderman.
That's it.
Okay, you guys look at me first. Right over here.
Have to hold their hands, get them back, have to bring them blind.
Don't know if you noticed, but there is a familiar face in the audience. It's Jeff Elliott. You still there? Or did he leave? Okay. Well, I guess he just wanted to make sure somebody else took over.
Good thing you showed up, Ron, or you'd have been up here again.
They were afraid I wasn't going to be here?
Just in case. So now we're back in session. And the first order of business is organizational business, the election of a vice mayor.
Mayor McGill, Miss Alderman LaMarche did contact me and wished to get to you guys that she would be interested in for doing vice mayor again.
All right. Does anybody have a nomination?
Are we doing nomination for the beer board or for the,
This is
This is vice
for
mayor.
vice mayor.
okay. Well, I would like to nominate Dot LaMarche for vice mayor of the town of Farragut.
I second it.
Any other nominations? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations to Dot LaMarche. She's now the vice mayor again. And now we have to adjourn this meeting in order to start the beer board meeting. We'll stay seated here, though.
So I guess I need to run it, don't I?
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow, how exciting.
We're
I'll
gonna
call to
elect
order
somebody
the-
else here in a minute.
Yeah, you never know. We'll start the August 28, 2014 Farragut Beer Board. The first agenda item is election of officers. And the first position we need to nominate and elect is for chairman.
I'd like to nominate Ron Honkin for chairman of the beer board.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Wow, welcome back to myself, I guess. I was
And the vice chairman?
Vice chairman, any nominations for that? Who is the, Jeff was the current vice chairman, was it?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay.
I'd like to nominate Ron Pinchak.
I'll second that.
Will you accept that?
I do.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And the secretary.
Who do we have as the current secretary?
Alderman Markley.
Wow, and you've done an outstanding job, by the way.
Thank you.
I'd like to nominate Alderman Markley.
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Congratulations.
All right.
Now we have a beer permit to take up, right?
We do. We have approval of the meeting minutes from August 14th, and I had those here. Do we have,
They're on the back.
do we have a
back
quorum
page
for
of
that?
this.
Are they on the back of it? There we go. Thank you.
Quorum for the beer board. Well, we got the chairman, the vice chairman, and the secretary, so I think
Well, we had, well, we have a quorum to vote, don't we?
Yes, sir.
We
do.
do.
Yes.
Thank you.
We do.
All right. Anybody have any comments or corrections to the August 14th, 2014 Beer Board meeting minutes?
I make a motion that we approve the minutes as written.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, they pass. They're approved, I should say. And our last item for the evening is approval of a Class 4 on-premise tavern and Class 5 off-premise beer permit for Mind Your P's and Q's, 12744 Kingston Pike, Suite 104.
Yes, sir. This is very similar to the permit we had at the last beer board meeting. The Board of Mayor and Aldermen revised the beer permit ordinance in May of 2014 to allow for this additional class of permits. The details of the Class 4 and Class 5 permits are in your packets tonight. All of the requirements, the extra requirements, which is, one is to not exceed 3,000 square feet, and they are under that maximum square footage. Dan Johnson and the fire marshal is also working with the applicant for their sprinkler system certification. And the motion is to approve a Class 4 on-premise beer permit for tavern and Class 5 off-premise beer permit for the Mind Your P's and Q's at 12744 Kingston Pike. And the applicant is here tonight.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
How many taverns have we currently?
Currently, we have one that we approved last beer board meeting. This will be two. So we will have one more permit available.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
Is the applicant here?
Yes, sir.
Would you like to say anything?
May I come up to the podium? Sorry.
We just appreciate being here tonight and look forward to being in the town of Farragut.
Thank you. Welcome.
When are you open?
We hope in October.
Can you tell me exactly where 12744 Kingston Pike is?
It's in the Renaissance Center.
Okay,
Yep.
great.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Motion to approve the beer board permit for Mind Your P's and Q's at 12744 Kingston Pike.
Great.
I second it.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Motion passes.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. And that will bring closure to the August 28, 2014 Farragut Beer Board.
All right, so we're back in action for the Board of Mayor and Alderman meeting. First item is approval of the agenda, which is rather short, so
I'll move for approval.
Second.
all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Next item is mayor's report, and I don't think I have anything to say tonight other than we obviously had a very lively election. We had a great turnout of voters, and the fact that we moved our elections from April to August to line up with another election, I think ends up being a good idea because we got a lot of voters, and that's what we want. We want people voting. And next item is Citizens Forum.
I have two citizens like to speak tonight. The first one is Denny Wren at 12224 West Ashton Court.
Members of the board, Mayor, good evening. Welcome to our newest member. Congratulations on your election. My name's Denny Wren. I live at 12224 West Ashton Court in the Andover subdivision off of Smith Road. Several months ago, the town contracted the Rogers Group to do a resurfacing project on one of the streets in our town. They finished, well, I shouldn't say they finished. They completed their portion of the project about 2 to 3 weeks ago. And shortly after that, the Farragut Press printed a story or a comment section from one of our board members about the mess that was left behind from the Rogers Group during their paving process. If you haven't, I would encourage each of you to drive down Smith Road and go up into the Andover subdivision, which you all just nominated with a beautification award for the town. They have left, it's called tack. It's what they put down before they put the asphalt down to make it stick. They've tracked that tack all the way from the northern section of our subdivision, all the way out our subdivision, onto Smith Road and onto Grigsby Chapel for about 1.5 miles. I tried to send a video to each of you. I'm technically challenged, so it didn't work, but here's a little video in case you can't make it up there. After I noticed that nobody was doing anything about the mess, I took it upon myself to come in and meet with Mr. Smith, the town engineer, yesterday morning and voiced my concerns about the mess that was there. Not only is there a mess, but there's a huge safety factor involved. At the corner of Hickory Woods and Smith Road, they dropped, I don't know how much material, but in the last 2 weeks, car after car after car has come by there. Every time it rains, 25 miles an hour, because that's the speed limit on that road, when you go to approach the stop sign, your car will go into anti-lock brake mode because the surface is so slick, there's no way to stop. New tires, old tires, it doesn't matter. We haven't even had snow or ice yet. So I brought that to Mr. Smith's attention. He said there's probably not much they can do about it. And I said, well, there's a lot they can do about it. Just for the sake of argument, take this into consideration. Let's say that each of you up on the board hire me to come into your house to do some contracting work. And in the process of doing my work, I drop glue all over your floor, all over your carpet, out your garage, down your driveway, and down your street. Who are you going to call to fix that? Are you going to call me, the contractor that just charged you for that? You bet you are. That's exactly what I brought up to Mr. Smith. We need to call this Rogers Group and say, hey, come back and clean up your mess, or if you're going to leave it like that, don't bother putting in a bid for the next project. That's how life works with every business. And I think it's the Rogers Group's responsibility to come in, either resurface the road, recoat the road, or whatever. I don't know if you can all see this. It's bad. You wouldn't want it in your neighborhood, and I don't want it in my neighborhood. It's no different than not wanting a car wash up here on the corner. Why don't we want a car wash up there? Well, it doesn't really meet the profile that we're looking for. Well, this really doesn't meet the profile of $500,000 to $1 million homes either. And it really doesn't matter the price of any home. No homeowner would want that in their neighborhood. I contacted the Rogers Group and asked them to attend the meeting tonight. They declined. They said they had 7 big bids that were due tomorrow. I wanted to give them the opportunity to speak after I spoke here tonight to see what we could come up with. Mr. Smith has been gracious enough to stay in contact with me and let me know what was going on. One of the comments that was said was they're working with the Rogers Group and they might come in and clean up the problem with no profit margin, just bill for what it costs to do the job with no profit in there. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Why would I as a taxpayer want the town of Farragut to spend my tax dollars on somebody's mistake or mess? It's not right. None of you run business like that. I don't run a business like that. You hold the person responsible for the payment of it and making sure it's right when it's over with. And I'm just asking you, please drive up into our neighborhood, see for yourself what it looks like, and ask yourself, would I accept this? Here's the other thing. I asked Mr. Smith, when a contractor gets the bid and he does the job, does anybody from the city go out and do a final inspection on it, check all the boxes and say, oh yeah, this job's done, send payment? Because if that's been done, whoever was the inspector that went out there and signed it off for payment to be made needs a new lesson on what a final should be. It should never be finaled. The final payment to the Rogers Group should never be made until this problem is corrected. You would hold me responsible for every drop of glue on your carpet, and I'm holding them responsible for every drop of asphalt that they dropped in the neighborhood. And I'm not talking a drop. This is hundreds of gallons that go for several miles, and you've all seen it. Because if you've been on Smith Road or on Grigsby Chapel, you've seen it. However, when they've come out to Grigsby Chapel, they're a mile away from where the project took place. So the closer you get to the project, the worse it is. And I encourage you to go to Smith Road and Hickory Woods and see just how slick that road is. Somebody's going to have an accident. I asked the Rogers Group today, can you come out and at least fix that portion? Somebody's going to slide off the road into the neighbor's yard. There's going to be a huge accident. Well, we can't because we have all these other big jobs waiting and we're behind schedule. And I'm like, well, what kind of answer is that? I said, could you at least put up a slippery when wet sign? He said, yeah, we could do that. That's not acceptable.
Well, let me tell you, we understand the problem. I happen to agree with your position, and we're talking to the Rogers Group, and where this goes is yet to be determined, but we're not going to let it rest.
I appreciate that, Mayor, and I really
I would
hope.
like to add that the contract is not closed out. They have not been paid yet.
Good.
And that's what I expressed to you today.
I would hope before that payment is made to them that each of you go take a look at it before anybody signs that check, or before they do one more bid in this town. Because if that's the type of work that they do, we don't want them here. You wouldn't want them here, and I don't want them here. Because, first of all, as a citizen, as a homeowner, I shouldn't have to come to the town engineer and complain about a project that you contracted to do. That should be something done when one of the city or town inspectors goes out, looks at the job and says, oh man, we've got a mess. We've got to do something about it. But yet the Farragut Press writes an article. You have a citizen come in talking to the engineer. That's not the way it should operate. He doesn't want to hear from me. He doesn't want to hear from 380 other homes. He's got a hard enough job as it is. Somebody needs to go out there from the town and look at it and make a decision whether or not you want to hire him again to do another job, or if you want to sign the paperwork over or sign the check over to him and have somebody else come in and clean it up on our dime. And I wouldn't appreciate that. I don't think you would either. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Our second speaker is Josh Richardson.
Mr. Mayor, thank you for the opportunity to bring to your attention something that may be of importance to the town of Farragut. I represent a group called the Friends of the Clamagore, who were organized about 3 weeks ago for the purpose of saving a World War II submarine that is about to be sunk as a reef off the coast of Florida. This submarine is a historic submarine. It was granted National Historic Landmark status in 1989. It serves currently as a Cold War memorial and is in fact a national treasure. We would like to rescue this submarine, save it, bring it to East Tennessee, restore it, open it back up to the public, and have it be the centerpiece for, if you will, an East Tennessee Military History Museum. Currently, East Tennessee has no consolidated military history museum. There is a war museum in Nashville, there's one in Memphis, and there are some various other little museums scattered about Middle and West Tennessee. And although East Tennessee has a lot of small places and a lot of wonderful historic sites, we don't have a consolidated place where the public or school kids can go and see the history of East Tennessee from the Revolutionary War all the way through current conflicts. It's very disjointed to go to a Civil War site. If you go to Loudon, it's pre-Civil War with the French and Indian War. If you go to Bristol, you have the Fort Watauga, where the Revolutionary War started with the Over Mountain men traveling to North Carolina, etc. So we believe that East Tennessee would make a wonderful home for the Clamagore. First and foremost, we have the water necessary to transport her from Charleston, South Carolina to East Tennessee. We are located at the crossroads of I-40 and I-75. We're also very close to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, the most visited national park in America. Lots of traffic traveling through our area. And once the submarine arrives here, we would be the only location in the inland southeast with a submarine, or any naval vessel for that matter, on display to the public. We would be only the second location in the entire South with a submarine or naval vessel on display. The other is in Mobile, Alabama, approximately 10 hours away. So there would be no competition with other museums of this type or other operations. We expect, based on the research that's out there, that other submarine museums or naval or maritime museums of this type, that we would generate more than enough revenue to be a self-supported museum, to fund not only the maintenance and operation for the submarine as well as the museum, but to fuel educational programs or fund educational programs and educational outreach, such as programs for Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, and other community organizations and the public at large. We have an opportunity through this museum to reach out to the schools of Knox County and surrounding counties to create a hands-on history museum, if you will. Last, submarines and naval vessels, they generate revenue. They draw people in. As I mentioned earlier, we believe that we would be fully self-supported based on that revenue. Submarines are visited, the 26 submarines around the country of one type or another draw in reunion groups from the Navy. Hundreds upon hundreds of these groups exist, and they are always looking for a venue to travel to that has something available to them, but also has a naval vessel. For example, there's one group right now in Oklahoma who's going to be traveling to see the Clamagore in its current home in Charleston, South Carolina. They have 60 hotel rooms booked, and they're flying from across the country. They'll be there for 5 days and 4 nights. They're going to stay in hotels, they're going to eat meals, they're going to buy gas, and they're going to spend money at retail outlets. Having a submarine as a centerpiece of a museum in East Tennessee offers us the opportunity to share, display, preserve our military heritage, which goes back much farther than most people realize, but it also offers us the opportunity to generate economic impact in our community. So, having said that, the purpose of Friends of the Clamagore is to save the Clamagore and restore it, but we need a home. So we're looking for some municipal support from someone in East Tennessee who would be interested in offering us a home for the Clamagore. And so I just submit to you, if this would be of any interest, we would certainly love to come back and present a more formal presentation concerning this. But one of the areas of interest for us as far as a home, obviously here on Fort Loudon Lake, around the Cove, and we would entertain any number of other places should they be offered.
Do you want it in the water or out of the water?
We have an option for both. There are proponents for being in a dry berth. There are proponents for it being in the water. There are costs associated with each, so we would need to evaluate the piece of property. But having said that, the property does not necessarily need to be on the water per se, but it's got to be close. The submarine is 325 feet long, so it's not like we can carry it a mile inland. But we have the ability to move it within short distance, several hundred yards of the shoreline.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to offer one little clarification, and let me tell you what I saw and what might be wrong with what I saw. I had a meeting in North Little Rock, Arkansas, a couple of years ago, and they do have a submarine there. Is it the same kind of submarine? It was a World War II vintage.
Yes, sir. I would say that I left one thing out. Our submarine is the last of its kind. There are no other submarines like this left in the world. There were originally 9 of these. Her 8 sisters have either been used as targets or sold for scrap. So it's similar. That submarine is a little bit older than what we have. It's a Guppy 1A or a Guppy 2. We're a Guppy 3. Means we had one more conversion upgrade than that boat.
This strikes me something that is bigger than just a town of Farragut. Sounds like something that you would need to have a coalition of groups to pull it off.
Yes, sir. We would very much.
You're talking to others?
We have spoken to Knox County, to Mayor Burchett, who expressed his interest in this project, and at that time highlighted that there was some potential for Fort Loudon Lake, potentially in the Cove or somewhere nearby. And I've met with him on several occasions and have a meeting with his chief of staff again tomorrow. We spoke with the city of Knoxville, who expressed that they weren't terribly interested at that time when I spoke to them.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, sir.
And I'd just like to clarify too, Josh, I spoke with a gentleman earlier in the week. You're not looking for funds from the town of Farragut or anybody necessarily to bring it here. This is a self-supporting venture that you're looking for a place to put it and support from the community, not necessarily monetary support.
That's absolutely correct, sir. Mayor, to make reference to your to the Razorback in Arkansas, the municipality in that case simply brokered the deals to establish the museum. Every penny that was paid for that project to transport the submarine, to restore it, to put it on display, build the museum, and open it to the public was all private funded. That is what we would like to do, Alderman Markley, is simply have the support of the community, and we need a home to be able to display this in a community that would be proud to have it, and we seek to have all the funds that are required to come from public sources, or I'm sorry, from private sources. So we're not asking for money short of perhaps leasing us a piece of property for perhaps the generous sum of $1 a year for some number of years.
Okay, that helps. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more?
No, sir.
Well, then we move to approval of the minutes of August 14th.
I make a motion to approve the minutes from August 14th meeting.
Your second?
Yes.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And next item is an ordinance. This is second reading, ordinance 14-10 on first reading to rezone parcel 59 tax map 152 and parcels 001 and 2 through 034, tax map 1531B, located on the north side of Turkey Creek Road across from Anchor Park, approximately 28.4 acres from R4 attached single family residential district to R1 rural single family residential district and OSMR open space mixed residential overlay.
Thanks, Mayor. Can you put the map up, Elson? Yeah, there you go. I'd like to refer you to the map on the screen and Resolution PC 14-05 and Ordinance 14-010. This development is located on the north side of Turkey Creek, as you said, across from Anchor Park. Fairly new development. First phase is built, front portion, and due to the changes in the market, the owners of the villas of Anchor Park are wishing to sell the development. Potential buyer would like to have the ability to construct detached buildings and is requesting a downzone of the development from R4 to R1 OSMR, Open Space Mixed Residential Overlay. The R4 zoning district does not provide for detached dwelling units, and the R1 OSMR permits both detached and attached. An example of this would be the cottages at Price Farm along McPhee Road across from McPhee Park. That's an R1 OSMR development. At their meeting on July 17th, 2014, the Planning Commission recommended unanimously to approve the rezoning that is reflected in Ordinance 14-10. Commissioners viewed the request as desirable since it lowered the density and increased the open space and was consistent with the character description for the properties provided for in the land use plan. Though the recommendation that was made at the July 17th meeting to approve the rezoning is all that is required under state law, the town's practice has been for the Planning Commission to formally recommend an ordinance through a resolution. The resolution was not included in the Planning Commission's approval in July and consequently will be presented to the Planning Commission at their meeting on August 21st, 2014. I probably didn't need to read that because it's already happened. So again, this was unanimously approved by the Planning Commission, and I'll answer any questions you have at this time.
Gary, there's no variation in this from what we approved on the first reading, is there?
Correct. There is no variation.
I'd like to move for approval.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Moving to business items, first one is approval of a resolution R-2014-07 declaring certain town property to be surplus property.
Yes, sir. The two items we have tonight is aluminum picnic tables and softball fencing. Both of these have a market value of greater than $100. Therefore, they meet the criteria for surplus items. The town will advertise the items on govdeals.com, which is an online government surplus auction site. The resolution approval will allow for the removal of the items from the fixed asset list and advertise the sale of the items on the GovDeals website. The motion is to approve resolution R-2014-07, declaring certain town property surplus property.
I'll move for approval.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Next item is approval of branding platform statement by North Star. And I understand we're going to have a presentation.
Mayor, we are. If let me kick it off, and we'll introduce our special guest tonight. Mayor and Board, we entered into a contract with North Star Destination Strategies back in January of this year, and they have been working very hard the last 4 months or so, 5 months, on doing a ton of research to develop a brand for the town of Farragut. Really the first branding and marketing campaign that we have done in our 34-year history. And moving forward, we wanted to make sure we got it right, and we selected the best firm to do the job. Their history in this, and Lori could probably go into it with you, but they've worked with over 200 cities all over the country doing this kind of work, and we're very excited about what they have to propose to us tonight. What the board's going to be being asked to look at is a lot of information, but at the end of the presentation, the goal is, if the board is ready to go ahead and approve the brand platform statement that you're going to see near the end of the presentation. And the key thing to remember about the statement is that it's not going to be necessarily utilized in the marketing and the statements that you see in a lot of the brands that come out, but it is the backbone for that, and we need to make sure that the board is very comfortable with that statement. We have been looking through this. Lori presented this to an internal branding committee that we have last week. We were able to look at it for the first time and make a couple of suggestions, but I think for the most part it's ready to present to you tonight, and we're really excited about it. So with that, I'd ask Lori Odom, who is Vice President of Research and Economic Development for North Star, to come forward, and she's going to walk you through the presentation tonight.
Great. Thank you so much, David. I feel bad. Every other speaker has had a couple of cards with them, and I have a big stack of notes. So I'll warn you in advance, we've got a lot of research to go through. And what you're going to see tonight actually is a summation of our research. It's not the full battery of research. It is very interesting. I'm going to move through it very quickly, and I'll ask that you hold your questions to the end of the presentation, and I'll be happy to cover any of those that you may have. As David mentioned, we're going through the research. The goal is to share that with you, and then at the end to reveal the insights or the story that we gleaned from that research. And then finally, to unveil the strategic direction in the form of a brand platform statement for marketing and branding Farragut. So let's start with talking about what a brand is and why you're doing this. Like every person, every community has a brand. It's your reputation. It's what residents, businesses, developers, it's what people say about you when you're not around. And branding is what you do about it. Branding is the strategic orchestration of all that you do to affect what they're saying, but it's far, far more than that. Nobody moves anywhere, takes business anywhere, or visits anywhere based upon a logo and a tagline. Brands are all about emotion and experience, how people emotionally connect with your community. Those positive emotional connections and experiences, that's what affects what people say about you when you're not around. So marketing and branding, people often confuse the two. Marketing is how you communicate. It's how you take your message and put it out to be absorbed. And branding, it gets to your essence. It's about who you are, it's about your advantage, and it's about your promise. North Star's process moves from research to insights and strategy to creativity and then into action. We find that communities who work from a central strategic plan or a distinct point of difference are the most successful when they go to brand themselves. Audiences will differ. Sometimes you're going to speak to residents. Sometimes you're going to speak to small business. Sometimes you're going to be pushing that out to developers who may be looking to do business with Farragut, or even visitors. That message, though, should be rooted in the truth about Farragut and what makes this a special community. And if you do that, it remains consistent, and offers a consistent message about your community. Now, to understand what's being said, we conducted all of the research that you're going to see tonight. And let me tell you a little bit more about that research. We want to know what people say about Farragut. And we look at Farragut through the perceptions of three different audiences. First, we look at the community and uncover the brand from the people who know the city best, the residents. And next, we look at your consumers, people who do business in Farragut, shop there, who may travel through. And finally, we look at your competition to make sure that your brand sets you apart. And for today's presentation, I'm just hitting key research pieces that drive and inform the strategy. You'll have a full research report in a couple weeks that'll go through every piece that's in the contract. So I met many of you when I traveled to Farragut in late April. Myself and a team member were here and did some one-on-one interviews and focus groups. And during that visit, we talked a lot about assets, challenges, and opportunities for Farragut. And you see there on the screen the list of the assets that we were told are here in Farragut. The first thing that we heard the most about, and as I cover the research, the top answer is the answer that we heard most. So that's your strongest answer, your strongest response. We heard a lot about the look and feel of Farragut, how it's different, how it offers a sense of serenity, peace. There's a beauty in Farragut. We also heard about your strong sense of community, that there is really a true small town feel here. We heard a lot about Turkey Creek, your affluent resident base, the location, proximity to I-40 and I-75. We heard about the great public schools, the residential community and the offerings of housing that's here. A lot about your parks and greenways, also about the quality of life that living in Farragut offers its residents. We heard a lot about the educated residents that live here, who are working all around the area, working hard. We heard a lot also about the asset of low property taxes and that draw of not having a Farragut add-on property tax as a real asset for the community for residential growth. Every place, big or small, has challenges, and some that we heard while we were here in Farragut. were about the negative external perception. You might be thought of externally as maybe a little snooty, maybe a little elite. We heard a lot about busy residents. As I mentioned, you got a core group of people who are educated and working all around the area, so you may not have as many people who show up to volunteer, to serve on committees, or come to your council meetings. That's a thing that we see all around the country when we work with communities where people are living and working all around. A challenge of not necessarily being considered a business-friendly community. We heard about volunteer leadership, kind of like I mentioned before, being able to staff those committees that are so key to making Farragut run smoothly. We heard about local retail struggles, especially those that may be outside of Turkey Creek, that might be on Kingston Pike, and that's once again something that we see all around the country. We heard about empty storefronts. And some of this is outside of your control, but that was something that the residents mentioned. And we also heard about the tax structure. It's an asset, but it's also a challenge when you're funding yourself through one general main source of revenue with sales tax dollars. Just something to be aware of. Moving on to opportunities, we heard things like the purchase of the Russell House and what that may do for the future of Farragut and its historical offerings. The expansion and the connection of greenways. You're going to see a lot about parks, trails, greenways in our research as we go through. The community events that are a big way of how Farragut connects with its residents, and a big piece of making that small town feel and connection for Farragut, making it a special place. And we also heard opportunities around retail development. So there are some empty spaces, and there's an opportunity to fill those with new retail and new growth. So we started our research with a community leaders vision survey, and many of you probably received this email and you probably answered our survey. This was mostly open-ended questions, so it's a qualitative piece of research. It's aimed at collecting and gathering the perceptions of Farragut's community leaders. And it's sent to those people who have a vision, more or less, for the community. Okay? Let me share with you some of those responses. We received 147 responses from this survey. So when you first think of Farragut, what 3 words come to mind? We see affluent, residential, beautiful, and clean as the top 3 responses. Next, we asked these respondents to describe Farragut to someone who's never heard of it before, and you see their answers there on the screen. You guys have that in front of you. I'm going to keep moving fairly quickly, but you can always go back and read those. Here we ask how outsiders, and outsiders being those who don't live in Farragut, how they would describe it. And here we see that Farragut leaders feel that external audiences, they might be perpetuating that myth out there that Farragut is snooty or not welcoming to business. And remember some of these descriptions, because we're actually going to do surveying of external audiences later, and you can see how those stack up with what we actually found when we asked these same questions to external audiences. Okay. We ask if you could add something to Farragut that would make a positive difference for its future. What would you add? We see additional park and recreation amenities, a defined downtown, a civic center, and increased walkability as the top responses. And if you could take something away from Farragut that would make a positive difference for its future, what would you take away? We see blight, that false perception of elite or difficult, and that perception of difficulty doing business. Our next question, what in or about Farragut currently attracts the most residents, visitors, and businesses? For residents, no big surprises here. We see schools, quality of life, convenience, and parks and outdoor amenities as the top responses. For visitors, businesses and shopping, outdoor amenities, and entertainment. And finally, for businesses, the affluence and the income level of Farragut residents as the top response, and location is our next highest response there. Next, we ask, what are Farragut's biggest opportunities for growth? We see attracting new business, residential development, and creating a defined downtown as our top responses. Still with these community leaders, we ask, in their opinion, what is Farragut's greatest advantage compared to other neighboring communities in the following categories. We see for retail development, that level of affluence comes up again, location in Turkey Creek. For tourism, nothing. Access to outdoor activities and history is our top responses. For resident life, we see parks, schools, and safety once again. Next, we ask what business or industry is best suited for Farragut and why. We see retail, restaurants, and small business as our top responses there. Asking about the one investment Farragut should make to spur economic growth, we see your community leaders saying a town center, property redevelopment, and tax incentives as our top responses. Residents were given this list of attributes that you see next and asked to rate it as an asset, supporting economic growth, a challenge hindering economic growth, or does not influence economic growth. The yellow lines, those are your assets. So if you look toward the top of the list there, you see our top assets as public education system, parks and greenways, outdoor recreation, and retail options. We see a few challenges for economic growth. Those are in our dark gray, and those being found closer to the bottom. So entertainment and nightlife, traffic flow are your top challenges for economic growth. Next, we ask, what is Farragut's best kept secret? And we see parks and greenways, the community and the people, and I don't know as the top three responses. And I want to let you guys know, I don't know, when we see that, we don't consider that to be a negative answer. That gives us some open space to fill in that blank for people when they're thinking about Farragut. Our next question there is, what is one thing you wished outsiders knew about Farragut that they currently don't know? And you guys want people to know that you are a friendly community, that you have a great local government, you have a rich town history, and that you're not just rich people, were our top responses to that answer. Now we ask resident or respondents to do some visioning and tell us a little bit about their ideal version of Farragut in 10 years. We see expanded parks and greenways, a downtown center, and local business growth, making for a great Farragut in 2024. Next, we ask, where is the one place in Farragut that you would take a visitor so they would always remember their visit? And the parks were the most responded response that we had, and particularly lots of mentions for Founders Park at Campbell Station. We also heard about the Town Museum and Turkey Creek as our top responses. Now next, I'm going to give Tammy hopefully something not to write about. I'm joking. This is our question that always gets picked up by the media. It's our fun question. We like to get people thinking creatively about Farragut. So we ask them, if Farragut were a famous person, who would it be and why? And your responses there, we're not really interested in who they mention. It's the why behind it, why that person makes sense to people. So your top responses, Admiral Farragut was your most responded answer. Lived with enthusiasm, perseverance, and tenacity. Kim Kardashian was a top response there. Pretty, perceived as snobby and elitist, has a name people know, but they can't tell you why. And another similar response, Thomas Jefferson, intelligent, creative, supporter of education, multicultural, true ambassador, an achiever. So that's your top responses for Farragut there. We ask a similar question about a popular consumer brand, and we see Apple, Lexus, and Procter & Gamble as our top responses, with some interesting rationale there as to why. Very American, a little more expensive, but still desirable. Some interesting stuff. Okay. Next, we offer a list of descriptors and, oh, hold on, I'm sorry, guys, let's see. Okay. Next, we move on to another type of research, and this is an online community survey. So this was open to all Farragut residents, and we begin testing some of the things that we heard in our in-market trip. We begin testing some of the responses that we got in the vision survey to this wider audience. These questions are more quantitative, so you've got less open-ended and more ratings and ranking questions. And we received 201 responses to this survey. So we start by offering a list of descriptions, and we ask respondents to pick the two that best describe Farragut. We see great place to live, beautiful, well-maintained, family-oriented, and residential community as the top responses. Toward the bottom there, you see vibrant and lively, and business-friendly community receiving the least responses. Next, we asked this group of respondents to pick the two responses which most accurately describe Farragut's reputation to outsiders. And we see snobby and pretentious, and affluent and excellent schools as our top three responses. We ask what Farragut's greatest assets are. We see excellent schools, parks and greenways, and location as our top responses. And we also ask the greatest challenge currently facing Farragut. And we see vacant storefronts, the ability to attract and retain new business. And this, again, is something we see all around the country, not just in Farragut, especially when communities are working with a lot of retail and restaurant growth in their area. Those can be very hard for a town to control and influence whether they stay or go. And also, you see your third response here is that outside perception of snobby and difficult. Our greatest opportunity for growth in Farragut is retail growth and development and expansion of parks and greenways, and an effective marketing and promotion strategy, rounding out your top three responses. Our next question, if you could change one thing, add, remove, or change, something about Farragut that would improve its future, we see similar responses to what we saw in our earlier vision survey with community leaders. We see a more complete downtown feel, a community center, and taking away that negative external perception as our top three responses. What are most residents in Farragut attracted by? We see excellent schools, location, and aesthetics, that look and feel of Farragut, all in the top three, and falling right in line with what we're seeing in all of our research with the vision survey and the community survey here in our in-market conversations. Most visitors to Farragut are attracted to Farragut to visit friends and family or to shop, followed by parks and greenways. Most businesses are attracted to Farragut to be near Turkey Creek, to have access to that affluent consumer base and location. And residents feel that the two most important things to Farragut's identity as a community are those great schools we keep talking about, that aesthetic, that feel that you have, that look of Farragut, and the parks and greenways. Next, we offer respondents a list of community civic attributes and ask them to rank them on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being poor and 10 being excellent. We see the top rated response is safety of the community, followed by resident pride. We offer a similar list and ask them to rate them for business attributes. Again, 1 is poor and 10 is excellent. We see educated workforce at the top with our top rating and convenient location. And ease of zoning and permitting is at the bottom of that list for residents. And our final list is community offerings. Same thing, 1 is poor, 10 is excellent. Farragut is a great place to raise a family with excellent schools, parks and greenways, and a great location. Next, we ask respondents to tell us why they moved to Farragut. We ask them to rate this list or rank this list in order of importance. And we see that people like the small town feel. That's the most responded thing of what drew them in, or highest rated, I should say. The lower property taxes, the parks and greenways, and interestingly here, our excellent schools, they fall to the bottom when we rank them in this order. And that could be because there is such a strong reputation already in the community. People already had a comfort level with the school, so it wasn't a driving factor. Here we ask respondents to offer the first adjective that comes to mind when describing the following communities. In blue, I've inserted the Farragut response from our vision survey. And we see different responses here for the other communities than what we've seen for Farragut. And remember that some of our other Farragut descriptors involved beautiful, well-maintained, family-oriented, and great schools. Here we ask an open-ended question: what is Farragut's single greatest advantage or strength when compared to those communities that we just asked about? Our top response, aesthetics, followed by great parks and green space, good schools, and location were the top responses there. And you'll remember those personification questions we just went through. This time we asked the greater, larger community, if Farragut were a car, what would it be and why? And you see a Chevy Tahoe, a Lexus, and a hybrid SUV as our top responses there. Next, we're going to move on to a piece of research that we call our Community Brand Barometer. And North Star's Brand Barometer measures community members on a rating scale. If residents score the community as a 1 to 6, they're classified as detractors. If they score the community as a 7 or 8, they're seen as passives. And those who rate the community as a 9 or 10 are what we call promoters. In this question, we ask how community members would rate Farragut as a place to live as to a friend or colleague. 72.6% of Farragut residents are acting as promoters. They're actively promoting Farragut as a place to live. And I want to tell you that is a high, high, high score, okay? Only 8% are acting as detractors, and 19.4% are passives. And passives, they're kind of like that I don't know crowd I talked about before. Passives are great because with a little education, you can easily flip them over to your promoter category. Now, what I want to tell you is I was able to really brag about Farragut, and I got to have the community that's had the highest ever brand barometer score as a place to live. You guys broke an all-time 12-year North Star record with the brand barometer as the community whose residents rated it the highest as a place to live. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that here in a minute. So people love living in Farragut. When we ask about visiting Farragut, we see our responses. We still see enthusiasm here. We have 43.9% that would recommend Farragut as a place to visit, which is slightly above the national average. 23.8% are passives. And finally, we have a little over 32% that act as detractors, and this is right in line with the national average. And one thing that I want to point out, when I looked at your raw data, your detractors rate on a scale of 1 to 6. The majority of your scores for detractors were a 5, so just people who probably feel like there's more exciting things to do in the area, or they weren't 1s or 2s. The majority of your scores were at a 5. And this might be that group that also kind of mentioned that we need a little more nightlife in Farragut. You might be seeing some of those responses come out here. And finally, we ask how they would rate Farragut as a place to conduct business, and we see still that the promoters are above the national average. So you've got nearly 38.1% of residents ready to recommend Farragut as a place to do business. And we have less than the national average for detractors, which is good. Okay. So we conclude this part by showing you our brand advocacy score, and what this does is it removes the passives and then it subtracts the detractors from the promoters to come up with your overall score. And in this chart, we show the national averages in light blue, if you can see those, and then Farragut's numbers are in the darker blue. As I mentioned earlier, Farragut as a place to live edged out North Star's all-time high, which had been set by Lee's Summit, Missouri, and I'm going to show you an example of their work at the end of my presentation tonight. And what's really, really cool about this from a community branding standpoint is Lee's Summit high score was set after their brand had had a chance to take hold. So that was something that after about 2 years of them working through their branding process and really pushing out their message, that high score had taken some time to root. So it's going to be exciting to see how this develops for Farragut when we have a chance for residents to really grab hold of the brand that's developed and have even higher scores for living. Okay? So our next piece of research is what we call tapestry. And you guys might be familiar with this. It's market segmentation research, typically under the name tapestry or mosaic. And I know that you guys do some work with the shopping center group, and I saw that this was part of their research for the ICSE show. And tapestry profiling, it allows us to take a resident footprint and categorize it into segments. And we're going to look at how Farragut residents compare to the greater region. So tapestry classifies U.S. neighborhoods into 65 market segments based on socioeconomic and demographic factors, and it pulls this information from census records, it pulls this information from customer loyalty cards, and gives info about the type of person or the type of people that live in each address. Okay? And each of these groups is going to be divided and has a kind of a name that tells you a little bit about it. So let's start by looking at Farragut residents. So start by looking at the bottom of this chart, and you'll see the numbers 1 to 65. 1 is the most affluent, and 65 is the least affluent segment. Farragut residents span 5 segments. Okay, so the top segments that you see there in that box, affluence level 7 at 46.3% of Farragut residents. That group is called ex-urbanites, and I'm going to tell you about them in a minute. Our next largest segment of the Farragut population is affluence level 2 at 39.3% of the Farragut population. We call them suburban splendor. Our next group is affluence level 14, prosperous empty nesters at 8.5%, followed by affluence level 3, connoisseurs at 4.5%, and then affluence level 17, green acres at 1.4%. Okay? So let's look a little more closely at what this means, and as I read through these, you'll probably self-identify, or you'll know your neighbors when we talk about these groups and their descriptions. You'll probably recognize some people that live in each one of these. The largest percentage of Farragut residents are in a category called ex-urbanites. They prefer open space with affluence. 40% are empty nesters. The median age is 46.2, and the median household income, the national average is around 80,000. They listen to public radio, donate to PBS, and they're active in their communities. They golf, boat, hike, and they're practical shoppers. This is probably why Costco is thriving here in Farragut. Our next group, at 39.3% of the population, very high affluence level, it's the number 2 on the scale, is a group that we call suburban splendor. And these are maturing families with adolescent children. The median age here is 43.1, with a very high household income of around 115,000. This group likes to travel quite a bit, both domestically and internationally. They're technically very savvy. Their homes feature the latest amenities, so gives you an idea of who's in that suburban splendor group. Our next group for Farragut residents is affluence number 14, and they're prosperous empty nesters. So 75% of these folks live in homes built before 1980. In Farragut's case, when we look at that, it might be some of your early residents who settled here and really helped found the town. They are active physically and financially. They're golfers as well. These are probably folks that you pass as you're walking along the greenway. And they also show active interest in their homes and communities. These are probably a lot of your volunteers for your committees here for the town of Farragut. They like to travel. They still are reading their newspapers and keeping up on what's going on. Our next group that we see here, we see the percentage of the population dropping a bit, but it's affluence level 3, and they're a group called connoisseurs. So they're well-educated, married, wealthy, self-employed at twice the national average, a high median income. They're traveling domestically and also with foreign travel. They like to exercise, and they're shopping at those high-end department stores. And finally, rounding out the Farragut population, the footprint here, is a group called Green Acres. It's a very small percentage of your population. These are married couples with and without kids. They're a little bit country. They like the kind of open space and pastoral settings of developing suburban areas. And they might be buying motorcycles and trucks, and they're watching things like CMT and ESPN. They might be bringing you tomatoes. They like to garden. So when we look at this, we look at Farragut's footprints, and the Farragut residents, as you see, they're on the left of the screen. And on the right, we also looked at a larger footprint of the region so we could compare, and you'll see this in your research report. For sake of time tonight, we streamlined this piece a little bit. But we looked at residents in Knox County, removing the Farragut residents, and combined them with Loudoun, Anderson, and Blount County, and that's what you see as the regional profile on the right. You'll see that this table shows those 5 segments that comprise Farragut and the 10 that comprise the top 10 that comprise the region on the right. What was really interesting to us as we looked through this is nearly 86% of your population are found within 2 groups, those ex-urbanites and suburban splendor. So it shows us that the overall population of Farragut and what they like to do and their profile of this nature is very, very similar. Okay? Now we get to my favorite piece of research, and this is an external perception study. These respondents came from Knox, Blount, Anderson, and Loudoun counties, excluding Farragut residents. So we start by asking which best describes your place of residence, and we see 62% being from Knox County, followed by Blount, Loudoun, and Anderson. We ask respondents to gauge their familiarity with the following communities. Not surprising, Knoxville was the most familiar, but we see that Farragut was the second most recognized. And the interesting thing here is that when you pull Knoxville out of here, respondents rate themselves as very familiar with Farragut more than any of the other communities that are listed on the screen. You've seen this question before in our vision survey and community survey. What comes to mind when you think of the following communities? We see Farragut described as affluent and upscale, uppity, shopping, and Turkey Creek. Notice that Farragut and Sequoia Hills are the only mentions of wealth, and Farragut is the only mention of shopping. Next, we ask what differentiates Farragut from other communities in the Knoxville area. We see more upscale, more shopping, a separation from Knoxville, stricter zoning codes, and snobby citizens. But I want to give you guys kind of some context here. When we're looking at our respondents, upscale was the most responded at 84 responses. Shopping was 40 responses. Separate town government, 21 responses. Stricter codes and zoning, 21. And snobby citizens was 15. Next, we ask what most closely fits your perception of Farragut. We see shopping destination as the top response at 57%, followed by premier residential community, beautiful, well-maintained, and great schools, rounding out the top 4. We ask which community do you most associate with good schools? We see Maryville as the top response, followed by Farragut and closely by Oak Ridge. Which community do you most associate with high standards for development? Not a big surprise here. We see Farragut as the top response. Which community do you most associate with excellent parks and greenways? We see Knoxville, followed by Farragut as the top response. A great response here. Which community do you most associate with being progressive and forward-thinking? Farragut as the top choice, followed by Knoxville and then Oak Ridge. And another great response, we ask which community is most sought after for living, and we see Farragut well in the lead here, followed by Hardin Valley and Maryville. Next, we ask which community is most sought after for conducting business, and we see Knoxville, followed by Farragut. Which community is most family-friendly? We see Maryville, followed by Farragut, then Knoxville as our top 3. And next, we ask respondents if they've ever been to or visited Farragut, and we had an overwhelming response here. 99% of the respondents have visited Farragut. Of the 2 people who had not visited, they cited lack of transportation or too far away as their top reason for not visiting. And what would make them more likely to visit was if a friend or family member recommended it, and discounts and promotions. So now we move into questions of those who have visited Farragut. Most have visited 6 times or more in the last 3 years, spending roughly 1 to 2 hours when they come to visit. Most were shopping or eating at a restaurant as their primary purpose, with the secondary purpose of either shopping or eating, making the assumption that people are doing both when they're here. One's driving the other. Next, we ask respondents to rate a list of attributes on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being poor, 10 being excellent. We see our highest rating of an 8.1 as a Farragut, the best description is a shopping and dining destination, followed by high-end, looks well-maintained, cared for, and safe, and good schools, all our top responses there. For people who identified themselves as having a primary purpose of conducting business in Farragut, we asked them to rate the following business attributes on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being poor and 10 being excellent. Overall, we see really good ratings here, with the highest rating for business-friendly culture, which is great to see with all the work you guys have been doing, followed by available workforce and overall cost of doing business. And now we move back to our full response pool, and we ask what is most important to Farragut's identity. We see premier residential community as the top response, followed by location and great place to raise a family. And next, we're going to move into our external perception study. And this is where we get on the phone and we talk to people who have a solid awareness of Farragut, but are not residents or affiliated in a daily way. This list was provided to us by the town and contains a cross-section of chamber, economic development, tourism, competitor communities, developers, and brokers. So I'm going to put just a couple of slides worth of quotes up on the screen for you guys to read. Gives you an idea of what people say about you behind your back. All right. So that concludes our research, and I'm going to move into our insights at this point. We conduct all of that research that you just witnessed and more that you didn't see tonight to really discover what is most relevant and distinct about Farragut. It has to be honest, authentic, rooted in history, but you always have to have an eye toward the future. We're looking for those aspects that are distinct, but let you articulate your advantages to a variety of audiences. And sometimes developing a brand for a community is all about a prominent asset, like a canyon or a mountain range or a lake or a very well-known business. But other times, a community brand is about the spirit of the place. It's centered on the way a community thinks, or how it makes you feel, or how it approaches a solution to a problem or future opportunities. Now, I will warn you in advance that rarely is this a surprise or a revelation. We say it's more evolutionary than revolutionary because you all know your community the best. It can often confirm what you've always thought about the town, or it may surprise you a little bit in how creatively something that seems very simple can come to life. But we're never going to tell you to be something that you're not, even if that's secretly your hope. I don't think that's the case here, but we won't do it. So let me tell you a little bit about kind of high level what we learned about Farragut. Through the research stage, throughout it, we sit down as a team at North Star and we brainstorm about the community and the type of information that we're discovering. For some communities, that starts, or for most communities, it starts with an overview of their history, and we see if there are any interesting elements there that help us understand the community. And for Farragut, there is an interesting story. We heard a lot about that group of forward-thinking residents who came together to control their destiny out of a desire to keep truck traffic from zooming past schools and homes, flood zones from becoming residential areas, and commercial development from gobbling up the natural beauty and the charm of the area. This group of hard-working and dedicated residents banded together and created a new town and a new government, all of which focused on creating an excellent quality of life for its residents and to become the most desirable place to live in the Knoxville area. High development standards, including zoning controls, building codes, and signage, as well as major road improvements, have all been important aspects to the town's growth over the last 34 years. They are part of the core values on which the town was founded, and as you may remember from the research, underpin what makes Farragut a desirable place even today. These core values are still very evident in Farragut, even though they may be expressed differently now, as Farragut places greater emphasis on becoming more business-friendly and opening the door to business and smart development. So we understand the history and how it connects to the present. What else did we hear about Farragut today? Throughout our research, we're constantly listening for repetition. Repetition is a good thing because it helps to make sure that we're focusing in on the right direction. And what did we hear over and over about Farragut? The main thing that we heard is Farragut is an amazing place to live. When your descriptors are things like premier residential community and you're recognized as the most sought-after community for living, this probably doesn't come as a huge surprise to you. But what makes Farragut a great place to live? Farragut kids are zoned for great schools. And there was a quote in our research that talked about the engagement of Farragut parents, that it turned a county school really into that town environment and really rooted people there. It brings that sense of place and small town feel to Farragut. Farragut is a family-oriented community, safe and well cared for. And finally, that small town friendly atmosphere. Farragut is a place that appeals to people from all over. There is not a sense of alienating outsiders who move into Farragut. It's a place that welcomes you and welcomes you to make it your home, whether you're coming from Indianapolis or even India. What else did we hear? Farragut has become a major shopping destination for those in the greater Knoxville area. It's a main part of your attribute list when outsiders think of Farragut. And while much of that is attributed to Turkey Creek, there's also a thriving local business community in Farragut. Programs like Shop Farragut help spread that local shopping message. We also heard about the benefit of Farragut's location. With immediate access to I-40 and I-75, it's an easy commute into Oak Ridge or Knoxville, or even Atlanta or Chattanooga. We also heard about Farragut's change in attitude toward business development and the goal of changing that perception of being a challenging place for developers. And finally, we heard about all the wonderful amenities that Farragut offers. For residents, there are the beautiful parks and greenways, complete with splash pads, a turf field, fishing pond, so many ways to experience the beauty of East Tennessee. Plus, there's the goal of making Farragut a more walkable, pedestrian-friendly community. For businesses, the Farragut Business Alliance, the EDC Committee, and the Chamber of Commerce all focused on keeping business thriving and connected to Farragut. And I read a Gallup poll recently that said the most important aspects motivating people to connect and attach themselves to their community are social offerings and community events, a welcoming nature, and an attractive appearance. And we have all of those things in Farragut. So no wonder we have a group of passionate people who love where they live. So taking into account our history and adding to that who Farragut is today and our goals for tomorrow, we start to develop our narrative. And that begins in the form of a brand platform statement. I want to tell you a little bit about the brand platform statement before I unveil it to you so you'll know how to evaluate this. This is a research statement. It's not meant to be creative. It's not meant to spark emotion. All of that comes later down the road in our creative development. What I want you to do when you read this statement is to say, does this sum up the research? And does this sound like Farragut? Does it sound like a good description of who we are? Okay? And I want to tell you in advance, this is an internal facing statement. It's not something that pulls out and becomes a strap line. It's not something that you'll see in your written narrative. So the brand platform, it's composed of 4 pieces: a target audience, and that's for whom your community has the most appeal; a frame of reference, which is a simplistic reference. We consider it a geographic identifier. It's for someone who knows nothing about your community. Your point of difference, which is what's most relevant and distinct about you. And then the benefit, what's in it for residents, businesses, and visitors. So the brand platform statement for Farragut, our target audience, for those who appreciate beauty and forward thinking in equal measure. Farragut, Tennessee, the Knoxville area's most desirable community, is a premier destination for living, shopping, ease, and amenities built by the hard work and ideals of high achievers, allowing your opportunities for growth to come with an assurance of established excellence. And I'm going to walk you through a point-by-point rationale. Okay? Remember, once again, this is our research statement, so we're summarizing the research. We're not tugging at your heartstrings just yet. We just want to make sure that we've taken the research, our findings, and putting into place a structure that we can jump off into our creative development. Okay? So our platform rationale, let's first talk about that target audience. That's who will find Farragut most attractive. Okay? For those who appreciate beauty and forward thinking in equal measure, this falls right in line with those high development standards in Farragut that cause a different aesthetic from neighboring areas. In a formal sense, Farragut is a place that appeals to those who equate beauty with a less cluttered, a manicured and pristine environment, but natural beauty is also very, very evident here in the lush parks and greenways of Farragut. And that word beauty is also meant to convey that serenity and peace, that less cluttered aesthetic that you feel as you drive into Farragut. Okay? As we saw in the research, Farragut is considered to be the most forward-thinking community amongst its neighbors. So that's where we get our appreciating beauty and forward thinking. And that forward thinking, the use of that is a nice way to reference your historical legacy of the creation of Farragut, but also to be forward thinking as to what Farragut's going to be tomorrow as the town develops. Next, we move on to our frame of reference. And the frame of reference here, Farragut, Tennessee, the Knoxville area's most desirable community. This frame of reference, it clearly states your proximity to the most well-known city in East Tennessee, which is Knoxville. The phrasing of most desirable community is pulled from the research. It's a way for us also to highlight that really high brand barometer score for living, and also that CAP question that we asked in our external market as the most sought after place for living. And remember, guys, you don't brand yourself to tell people you're just okay. So sometimes it's all right to pat yourself on the back and brag just a little bit. And also, most desirable community is a strong statement, but there's a way to express that so that it's warm and inviting and not exclusionary. For our point of difference, we have a premier destination for living, shopping, ease, and amenities built by the hard work and ideals of high achievers. So Farragut is a highly praised and regarded town in which to live. We chose these words carefully. Living allows us to pull in those associations as a premier residential community and quality schools. Shopping allows us to draw from the strength of Farragut merchants, both in and out of Turkey Creek. Ease speaks to the convenience of location that we saw throughout our research, that proximity to interstates, but it also easily can translate into a business message when we want to highlight our ease of doing business and something that you guys have as a true asset you want people to realize. Amenities ties back to our parks, our greenways, but also ties into the business amenities that are available in Farragut, like the Business Alliance or the Chamber of Commerce. And the final part of that point of difference, built by the hard work and ideals of high achievers, it reflects the town's history, but also the community today. And the one thing that really struck us about Farragut is this is not a silver spoon community. People here are hard workers. They have worked hard to be able to live in this area. They continue to work hard. They're career driven, career focused. So gives a bit of a acknowledgement to that piece of Farragut. And our benefit, allowing your opportunities for growth to come with an assurance of established excellence. And here what we're doing is we're taking, this is where we get a little emotional, we're taking our, we're leveraging the point of difference to say what does that make us feel like. And opportunities for growth also allows us to creatively approach business and residential audiences. Your assurance of established excellence is a soft nod to the fact that Farragut comes with an assurance that there's consistency to development standards. Your home value is secure here. The city is fiscally well managed. That's that kind of wording of established excellence. And for retail development, it's a creative way of addressing the affluent resident base here in Farragut. So looking at our brand platform, for those who appreciate beauty and forward thinking in equal measure, Farragut, Tennessee, the Knoxville area's most desirable community, is a premier destination for living, shopping, ease, and amenities, built by the hard work and ideals of high achievers, allowing your opportunities for growth to come with an assurance of established excellence. Okay? I'm going to show you next how this goes from a relatively dry brand platform statement, that's a research-driven statement, and how it becomes creative and really comes to life. There's an element of trust here. We ask that you allow us to take this creatively and move it forward. We would never present anything to you that we weren't very confident and excited about the possibilities that we can creatively turn this statement into. So I'm going to change here. So we just debriefed on a tremendous amount of research, and you just saw the brand platform statement. It's that single sentence that condenses the last couple of hours into the strategic statement on which we'll build that creative. That statement, it's an internal guiding statement, okay? So it's not meant to be creative, not meant to be emotional. Each step of our process builds upon the next and leads to your final brand identity. And if you remember that hourglass slide I showed really early in our process, we're really about halfway through our process. So to help you guys understand how this creative rolls out, I'm going to show you an example from Lee's Summit, Missouri. Lee's Summit is a suburb of Kansas City. And research showed that what really their key assets were all around award-winning parks, a great place to live, really a solid environment in which to raise a family. But what was different about Lee's Summit was kind of their attitude around the excellence, and that became kind of the core of their strategy. So you see here their brand platform statement. For those seeking unassuming, community-minded neighbors, Lee's Summit, the highest point between Kansas City and St. Louis, affords you a broader perspective on what's important so you can go above and belong. Okay? So we take that research-based statement, the brand platform, and our first step back to you creatively is a written concept. And this is where that emotion folds in, okay? So Lee's Summit chosen written concept, it's in your packet, and I'm just going to read a couple of highlights instead of the whole piece today. But this is where that emotion, this is where that brand platform statement jumps off the page and really begins to come to life. In Lee's Summit, success means more than owning possessions. It means calling a community yours. Absolutely, surely, honestly, authentically, faithfully, truly yours. There's just something inspiring about that kind of relationship. You hold it a little closer, you value it a little more, you put your heart and soul into making it all you can be. And in return, you get the absolute sense of belonging that comes with being invested in something special. Far from an exclusive club, the Summit is a place where you can be casually comfortable in your own skin, and where newcomers are welcome to have as much of a voice in shaping the community as those who have lived here forever. Above all, the Summit is an open, evolving place where not only can you say you've made it, but also that you've made it distinct. So whether you're giving back, kicking back, or getting back to business, Lee's Summit is a place you can be sure of, a place that is absolutely, positively yours. So this, as you guys can see, is where the emotion starts to come into your brand platform statement. So based on a chosen written concept, we move on to looks, logos, and a color palette. And we start with looks because they help us understand the use of white space, photography, texts, and fonts. And this is an ad concept that was developed for Lee's Summit, which features the downtown deli. And it reinforces that feeling of connected and family-friendly for Lee's Summit. And it features the owner of that business there, Bob Jackson. This was an ad that was created for them, also featuring, this is Pepper the dog. They had a lot of dog parks, but kind of gives you an idea of how creatively that serves as the brand platform statement. It's the foundation for the creative, but it really comes to life when we start to develop these other pieces. Here's an example of Lee's Summit's logo with their strapline included, yours truly at the bottom. For Lee's Summit, for continuity, we created other logos for some of the other entities for downtown, the Chamber, and the EDC. And once the logos and looks are selected, we will develop a graphic standards guide, which helps you protect the integrity of your mark. So you'll receive that. That's the guide for Lee's Summit. And then we ask you what creative deliverables you'd like to see your new brand look applied to. And here are some ideas for Lee's Summit. And these are meant to be created with a local partner, but we give you some good ideas of how to extend that brand all through the community. For Lee's Summit, we created a stationery template for them, business cards, a way to redevelop a website in the spirit of the brand, pole banner design, and also wayfinding signage that use their existing infrastructure. Just did an update. And also some merchandise extending the brand. I love the onesie, I'm yours truly, give out to newborn babies as they were born in the hospital there. And we also showed them how to extend the brand into the infrastructure. They were doing a new skate park, so how that brand could be extended even further. So with that, I conclude my presentation and am happy to answer any questions that you may have.
I'll start with one word, wow.
Okay.
You guys did a lot of work. And it's very, it's a good feeling when you realize that what we already thought was confirmed by many others.
Good.
So thanks for doing that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, that was excellent. And I tell you, I was so impressed with what you learned about our town and how you brought it together, and to see what you were able to do for Lee's Summit. And it gets me more excited to see what you're going to be able to do for us with the final product. So I'm just, I'll stick with wow. How about that?
That's perfect.
Kind of like David. I look at David, I want to say wow.
Wow.
See, that I do. I said it the whole time.
Say that every morning, unfortunately.
So I guess my question is, where do we go from here?
Where we go from here is what we'll be looking for is council's approval on the brand platform statement as the guiding statement that we will use as we move into creative development. So we're looking for your approval on that statement and comfort that we have captured Farragut through our research and in the presentation of that brand platform statement. And that's what we will bring to life creatively.
Lori, can you go back to that
Sure.
slide with the platform statement just so they can
Sorry.
familiarize with that? Mayor and Board, just what Lori said, we're looking tonight for a approval of the board for this brand platform statement, and there's still a lot of work to be done. We're about halfway home now, but this is very important in setting the stage for the next half of the work that Lori and our staff's going to be working on. So if the board is comfortable with that, then we'd certainly recommend approval of the brand platform statement.
I will move for approval.
Well, do we get a chance to offer a change?
You certainly can. I think Lori may have some comments about part of that.
I just wonder, why do we restrict it to the Knoxville area? Why not all of East Tennessee? Or all of Tennessee?
We could certainly make that change. I'll say that our research really focused on the Knoxville area, so that's why you see that. But if that's something that you would like to see altered, we can look at that.
Probably, yeah, the southeastern United States, maybe.
The world, okay? Okay.
Lori, on that question, did your research, did it go much outside of this Knoxville region?
No, we focused on the Knoxville MSA in our research.
You know what I do like about I understand where they're coming from. What I do like about Knoxville in there is it's an anchoring point for people. And I think with what we're trying to, when you look at everything that was brought up about the town of Farragut, you know, East Tennessee has such a variety of areas. I think we could get lost in the shuffle. I understand where they're coming from, and I'm not necessarily disagreeing, but I think Knoxville anchors us where we're at. Knoxville overall is considered a pretty special place, not just in the southeast, but within the country. And as I travel around and I talk to people, you say you're from Knoxville, they get excited about that. You know, a lot of people have been here. And I think if we can identify that within this area being a destination, that we become a really special segment of this destination is what I think you're trying to do here. And I like that. I think East Tennessee I know where you're coming from, and I'm not disagreeing. I think it just gets lost in the shuffle a little bit.
From a strategy standpoint, I like the impact that you have when you are looking at that list of which is most sought after for living, and you have that solid Farragut by far the leading community, followed by the others. So I would tend to stick with Knoxville and not see it as a limiting thing at all. We all know Farragut's really good. All across the state would be my strategic thought. There would be to leave Knoxville in from that standpoint.
I had an observation, just a gut reaction to one part of it, and it's the last one. It's the benefit. I just really had a hard time understanding what it was trying to say, and I kind of get it now. I just wonder if there's not a better way to say it. Allowing your opportunities for growth to come with an assurance of established excellence. Just kind of just get bogged down in that. I'm wondering if in some way to sharpen that up a little bit.
Keep in mind, you're not going to see this again written this way. It's just meant to convey that we have a high development standard, that we are a safe investment, that this is a place that you can depend on the quality of development. And what you're seeing here, we go through multiple iterations of how to say this in the best way.
Yes, it's basically just a value statement, and we're going to
yes, and we're happy to go back and look at it again and provide you a couple of different options around that thought. But quite honestly, it's internally facing. You know, we can massage that out in the written concept to the point that I don't think you'd ever see that again or have that feeling.
Yeah, I know what we're trying to say.
Yeah, right.
And it's a great point. So, okay, yeah, this is not the finished product. I understand.
And it's hard not to wordsmith this, quite honestly, the more you look at it. And you'll find that it is a little bit clunky. That's the way they are. They're research statements. They're written based on the research. It's not a creative writer who sits down and writes this.
And you forewarned us of that. So,
and that's what I would tell you about that.
All right.
If you feel that this is Farragut and that you get the context of what it's saying and the rationale makes sense, I would move to approve as written here.
Very good. So
We had a motion?
Yeah.
I second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Great. Well,
Those
thank
pretty,
you.
Pretty enthusiastic ayes.
Great. Well, I think this is the dry part. So you guys are going to love it when the creative comes out. So we'll be excited to share that with you.
All right.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Town administrators report.
I'm just going to make this brief, but the mayor and I got a chance to go to Nashville last Friday and actually pick up a pretty big check from the state of Tennessee for $258,000. It's a CMAQ grant, which is Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Grant. What that grant will do is allow us to re-time all the signals in town, fix a lot of the loops, a lot of the hardware, fiber optic cables that need to be done, and that's going to help reduce air congestion with the cars idling as they're going through town. But we're very excited about that. We'll probably get some kind of contract from TDOT in the next 60 to 90 days to then start moving forward, working with the TPO as well. But again, it's 100% funding from the state, nothing from Farragut, but we will be locally managing the project. So anyway, we're very excited about that.
Man, it was a big check. I mean, big.
So big we couldn't cash it right then, but we tried.
You
We went to the treasurer's office and tried, but he wasn't there.
Did you get to bring it back?
We did. We did.
Office.
Sorry I didn't have it tonight, but Allison's hoarding it in her office. So
I like looking at it.
anyway, with that, that's all I have tonight.
All right. And we have no attorney here, so we have no attorney report, so
Before we adjourn, if I could, Mayor, with your permission.
We're in session again.
Okay. Three of the five of the elected officials of the town of Farragut just took a very solemn oath today, and we swore to uphold the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of Tennessee. And this is the second time I've taken this oath, and I'm not going to ask for a show of hands here, but I wonder how many of us have read the Constitution of the United States since completing our formal education, and how many of us have read the Constitution of the state of Tennessee? And I can say that I have read the Constitution of the United States many times, but I have not finished reading the Constitution of the state of Tennessee. I started reading it. It's really an interesting document in that it's a reconstruction document, so it was not the original Constitution. It was the one that was basically imposed on Tennessee, but was written after the Civil War. And it has a lot of insights into what the real concepts of the American Constitution were, in that they took the U.S. Constitution and brought out some points that they thought were important to incorporate into our state constitution. So I almost wonder if we shouldn't make it a condition of taking that oath to read those documents. And I've certainly challenged myself to complete that study, and I would like to challenge the rest of us to do the same.
I think that's a good point.
Thank you.
Anything else?
It's pretty easy to find. You just Google it, and it's right there.
Okay, and I think now we are adjourned.